Welcome to Leadership and People. This is a series that pulls back the curtain on leadership by interviewing CEOs, senior executives, and entrepreneurs who have had large exits. We ask these experts about how they built trusted networks to rapidly grow their companies and what advice they wish they knew if they could do it all again. Today on the show, we've got Dave Rutter, President and CEO at Costa Vida.
And put ourselves at a table with 5 or 6 people who have the same type of experiences with you, but in entirely different markets and entirely different industries. And now you hear people who are overcoming challenges and issues that they're dealing with, but in an entirely different market.
Dave, thanks for making time.
Thank you, Jess. Good to be with you today.
So, congratulations, by the way, on Monday opening the 88th location of your Costa Vida restaurant chain here. For people who haven't been to Costa Vida before, can you talk to them about Costa Vida?
Hey, I could take our entire show talking to them about Costa Vida. I was out there for the opening. Actually, it's in Apple Valley, Minnesota. Beautiful little city there. A city that really there's not a Costa Vida within hundreds of miles of this particular store. When we opened the store on Monday morning at 10:30 in the morning, there were about 100 people or so in line, and I have the great job of standing right there and welcoming every one of them as they come up to the menu board and just kind of telling them a little bit, giving them a peek behind the curtain, to use those words, into who Costa Vida is and what we do. Costa Vida, we prepare everything from scratch, and from my earliest roots in the restaurant business, that's what I was taught. And as we came into Costa Vida, that's exactly what they were doing at Costa Vida when we became franchisees many years ago. We take it all. I mean, all the way from the beginning. You're going to we cook our own meats on a daily basis. We make our own salsas. We make our own sauces. When you come up to the line, you're going to see those signature tortillas just coming off the grill, just actually pressed out and cooked and made there fresh for you. As you look down our line, there's only 2 items on that entire line that even have gluten in them, and that's our wheat tortilla and our flour tortilla. Everything else on that line is gluten-free. But the flavors will change your life. I mean, our food is tremendous. We'll put our food up against anybody. I'll never say we take the easy road, because we don't. I mean, we go to effort than most are willing to with their food, but it's a difference that you can taste, and it's a difference that you can feel after you eat our food. You feel good. You feel rejuvenated. You feel ready to go attack the rest of your day. And so Costa Vida is a fun business. It's a great business to be involved in, and I truthfully feel really blessed to be doing what I do. I feel like it's just a blast every day.
You know, thinking about the space, why do you think that we had the Taco Bells for so long before something like this came along and really has, dominated so much?
Well, I think people have become increasingly more aware, number one, of what they eat. I notice it myself, as I get a little bit older, I eat differently. Food affects me more in the way that I feel. I don't eat some of the foods that I used to be able to eat and feel okay. I just don't do that anymore. People are more discriminating, I think, with what they are willing to put into their bodies. And so there's still a certain market out there, I think, for the fast food. But for people who are willing to step up a little bit and get much more of an experience, I think that Costa Vida makes a whole lot of sense.
Sure. And I want to talk more about how do you grow an organization like this to get 88 locations. Before we do that, though, the theme of the show here, talking about leadership and people. Before we were talking about how your father-in-law was really a mentor to you and was somebody you learned some leadership skills. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. When I was 21 years old, I went to work for a restaurant in Orem, Utah, called Prestwich Farms. and actually went to work for the man who would become my father-in-law. I didn't know him at the time, but this guy was the type of a guy, very A-type personality. And when he walked into the restaurant, people kind of started to shake in their boots a little bit. I mean, I literally saw times where, I'd be in the back kitchen and and the prep cook would be back there cutting vegetables or doing whatever he was doing. And my father-in-law would grab his 55-gallon bucket and dump it out on the ground and grab that prep cook by the back of the neck and shove his head down there next to the garbage because he was, or next to the what he was cutting out of the vegetables, and upset because he was cutting too much of the stem of the broccoli into the soup and it wasn't going to taste right, or he was just, it was all about doing it perfectly. I mean, that when you are going to take the time to prepare food, that you do it perfectly. And he had such a passion for food and doing it right. He used to talk a lot about you love food so much that you take your shirt off and rub it all over your body, and he absolutely loved food and figuratively speaking, would rub it all over his body. I mean, it just oozed out of his pores. And I grew up, like a lot of kids growing up. I mean, when I grew up, we didn't eat out a whole lot. I mean, we ate at home mostly, and my mom was a great cook, but probably overcooked vegetables like a lot of people did back in those days. And, food was just food. And to see somebody who was so passionate and just so driven to serve the perfect meal and to take care of a guest in a perfect way, it really kind of sparked a fire inside of me that I wanted to be that same way myself. And so I really appreciated, even though they weren't always fun encounters, with my father-in-law as he came in. I mean, when he came into my restaurant, as I became as a general manager for them, and then ultimately a district manager for them, where I had multiple responsibilities. I did work very hard to run those stores properly, but food business is always a business that you can find things wrong, and he would, I mean, he would find those things, and those were sometimes hard conversations, and I learned a lot through that. I learned ways that I wanted to be as I managed and led people, and also some ways that I didn't want to be. But I definitely gleaned from him a lot of wisdom, a lot of ways to think and ways to lead and manage that I still use today, many, many years later.
Well, I just want to know how much working at Costa Vida is like boot camp now.
Well, so let me give you the other side to this story. So another mentor of mine, and he passed away when I was very young, but his imprint was still very much on me in developing who I was. My father-in-law, by contrast to the next person that I'll talk to you about, my father-in-law was executive vice president of KFC at a very young age. I mean, when he was 30 years old, this is back in the 60s, he became a multimillionaire as he sold his KFC restaurants that were in Las Vegas and down into Southern California. He sold them back to KFC corporate and went to work for them, and and so was independently wealthy, financially, and never have to work again at in his mid 30s, and really had developed quite an empire. This next person that I'll talk to you about happens to be my grandpa, and by contrast, his place of business was a small little grocery store in Malad, Idaho. I think that entire thing couldn't have been more than 1,000 or 1,200 square feet. Completely different than our mega grocery stores that we have today. It was called the Millstream Grocery. And my grandpa, his philosophy was different, from the standpoint of he wasn't so concerned about how many groceries he sold or how he was comping in sales from this year over last year. Truthfully, probably didn't even have any idea. What he was concerned about were the people in that town. And it is said, and I remember this as a little boy going into that grocery store, that his office door was always open, and that people would come and see him on a daily basis. And I remember some of this. I remember walking by that office and see him in there talking to what I thought was just some customer, and I had no idea what he was talking to him about, but that people would come to see him day after day, and he would spend time with them and he would counsel them, And then finally, as they worked through whatever problem they were dealing with at the time, then those visits would thin, but that his ministry, if you want to use that word, was working with the people in that town and really caring for them. And the groceries were kind of an incidental part, kind of a necessary evil to allow him to have a platform really to be able to help and coach and guide people. So I really, those are two pretty opposite ends of the spectrum guys, but both of them really helped me in developing. And my dad, this was my dad's dad that I was speaking of. My dad's very much that same type of a person, and so I was kind of raised with that deep love and care for others, and but then had kind of this other effect from my father-in-law of what it really takes to own and operate and build and grow a business in the competitive environment and landscape that we find ourselves in today.
That's interesting. My mom's dad was completely my hero in life, and also owned a grocery store in a little farm town in Canada, and completely my hero on how to treat people. That's kind of fun. That's a similar story for you there.
Yeah, very similar story. So, going back, that was kind of a long answer to a short question that you asked, which was is working in a Costa Vida like a boot camp, and I sure hope not. We do strive very hard to have great standards and to serve a quality product and to make sure our guests have a great experience, and so we do strive to do that. But we have a lot of fun while we're doing it. I mean, we work very hard to have a culture that inspires people to become their best selves and to be creative and optimistic about where things can go and are going.
Sure. There's a lot of people who have been in the food business and have not had, the positive experience you've had specifically in the restaurant side of things, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of folks that think they've got the idea for the next best chain, and it's not too many years later and nobody's heard of it anymore, right? When you think about the level of success that you guys have had, and like you said, getting to 88 locations, what's something that you don't think you could have learned any other way than actually doing this?
Well, I think it's a real discipline, because what you say is true. So I can't tell you how many times, and any of us who are in the food business always experience this, that somebody will come and say, "Wow, I've got a great couple of recipes here. Want to start a restaurant?" And honestly, as sad as it sounds, I'll do my best to talk them out of it, because I don't have many friends who've started restaurants and have been successful with them. I think you learn. I mean, the restaurant business is such an interesting business, because you really need to be able to, it's such a fast-paced, moving environment. There's so many moving pieces to it with all of the different food that you have in there. It's not like you close up the door like you're locking up an office at night. I mean, that food needs to be cared for properly and taken care of properly and created properly in the first place. And then you have the people aspect of this, because in our world, most of our employees are high school and college age young men and young women, and so you have a lot of people that you work with that their first priority in life maybe isn't necessarily their job, and so you have to learn how to inspire and guide and coach and direct these tremendous young men and young women. I mean, I think it's you know some people say we've got a game changer for a restaurant because we've got great food. Well, it's kind of price of entry in the restaurant business that you have great food. You have to have great food, because you can't even get out of the starting gates without great food. Now we'll put ours up against anybody and say that it's absolutely tremendous, but the differentiator for me, become your people and how you inspire and guide and coach them and help them. We know that for a lot of the people that are in our employ and that we have the blessing of being able to work with, that this may not be a career for them. I mean, this may not be something that they're going to do forever, but we have the opportunity to kind of to help make an imprint on their lives that will hopefully help make them in the long run better. You know, that they'll be better sons and daughters, and one day better fathers and mothers, and better brothers and sisters, you know, in their environment, because some of what they learn in a stressful environment, when you're in a situation where you're kind of being, you know, you're kind of being pushed because we've got a line of people to the door and we've got a situation happening or a problem happening, and I need to be able to adjust real time, you know, in the middle of that situation, and maybe do something differently, and at the same time not get upset or frustrated with a guest who you know might be pushing for a particular thing to happen that I don't feel like can happen at that exact moment. It teaches you a lot of self control. It teaches you a lot of discipline, and how we can stay focused on the bigger picture. And so I don't know, for me, that I would have learned that in just another environment. I love the fast paced environment of the restaurant business. I thrive on the energy of those meal periods, you know, lunch and dinner, when you're just cranking, you're doing everything that you can. And it's just, it's such an inspiring thing to see a team that is well trained, working in sync, and producing something that really is fantastic. It's awesome to see something go from an idea that gets put on paper that becomes a vibrant part of a community where you know families gather for birthday parties and graduation parties, and couples get together for dinners, and the ladies in town meet there, and the business people in town meet there. It's just, it's cool to see a restaurant become kind of a gathering place and become part of the fabric of a community. It really, it's exciting.
Sure. Well, and nowadays where you're not, in the store, helping the college kids get the food out, out to the people, and you're basically, overseeing this across many states. What's your day-to-day life like now? As you have this many franchisees, this many locations, what does that involve now?
Well, it's interesting because I still do try and do that because it's very easy to lose touch. One of the Another phrase that I learned from my father-in-law is beware of boardroom decisions, and a boardroom decision is one that sounds fantastic around a board table, um, horrible in practice. In the absolute in the real world, of somebody having to execute it. And so I still do try and spend. I was 2 days out, as I mentioned, in Minnesota for that opening. It's very good for me because I feel like I can continue to provide and the leadership that I need to be able to provide to our teams and to franchisees and all of that. And so when you ask day to day right now, my day to day has consisted this day today has consisted of a meeting with a potential franchisee. On a monthly basis, we have a discovery day where we'll bring in the groups of potential franchisees. This happened to be one who was in town and just had a little bit of time today and wanted to get an hour with me. Turned out that he's a Sonic franchisee back in Nashville, but he grew up in Springville, Utah, just down the street, and happened to know and went to high school with our director of operations, and so I met with him for an hour. I also had two calls with franchisees in two different marketing in two different areas today, two different states, and we discussed marketing ideas that truthfully I wouldn't have been able to discuss with the same level of knowledge and experience had I not been in stores and been working on and seeing those things come to fruition in the same way. Had a couple meetings today with different team members, different department heads, and so my day definitely consists of a lot of problem solving, which anybody in a leadership role is going to have to do. Um, we thrive on things like that. Some people will look at that and say, wow, I don't want to do that kind of stuff. But the reality of it is, I think as you continue to lead in any organization, um, you need to become good at it, at solving problems, and help people stay focused on the vision of who we want to be, and the path that we're going down. It can become easy to get derailed in in kind of the flood of the whirlwind of things that will happen to you in running any level of business. We can get totally um, trapped in emails and phone calls and all those kind of things, and it becomes easy to lose focus on, ultimately where is it that I want to go. And I think for any high achiever, and anybody who looks to excel, we have to be able to stay focused on our vision, and the mission of who we are, and what we want to be. And so that, I think, from a leadership standpoint, is an important, really the key thing for any leader to stay focused on.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're kind of closing in on the end of part one of the episode, or episode one here, part one of the interview. Before we go, though, you and I are both in the Corporate Alliance and the CEO Club, the C4 group. You're such a busy guy. What is it about a group like that that's worth your time? Why are you part of Corporate Alliance's C4 group?
Well, I think we were probably one of the earliest. We've been members for a long, long time, and I know that sometimes my neighbor actually is one who kind of interfaces with me and invites me to all of the things, and she probably gets frustrated at time to time because I don't always make as much time as I should, and every time I do make the time, I think I'm going to be better about that next time, because the value of what I get there. I think it's really easy in our lives just to get siloed, and we only know what we know and what our close circle of people that we work with know. When we take the opportunity to take ourselves out of that situation and put ourselves at a table with 5 or 6 people who have the same type of experiences with you, but in entirely different markets and entirely different industries, and now you hear people who are overcoming challenges and issues that they're dealing with, but in an entirely different market, the ideas that come as a result of that, the brainstorming that has come as a result of things that I have learned in some of those sessions, honestly, has been really, really phenomenal. Just had one the other day where 5 or 6 local business owners came in, and we had a couple different questions that we posed to them. And when I first saw the list of those that were coming, I thought, man, are they really going to be able to give me tremendous value for the restaurant space? Getting caught in that same trap of what I know in my own space. What we took from that was so beneficial. It took a couple hours to put the thing together, but those couple of hours saved weeks and months of time, and countless dollars in roads that we may have gone down that we changed as a result of a meeting like that. So that's why I think it gets back to that kind of thought of spend some time working on your business and not just all of your time working in your business. It's really easy for us to get caught up working in our business. Those experiences and networking sessions with Corporate Alliance really give us the opportunity to work on our business and focus in an entirely different way than we do just from an office environment every day.
Yeah, I actually totally agree. Our consulting firm, Mylan Advisors, I show up and I'm thinking, I don't know if there's anybody else here who's doing the type of work we're doing. And then Jim Bennett from Now CFO will have the most perfect advice for how to handle clients and what kind of a system we should be looking at as we grow. Yeah. And it's just perfect, right? Well, listen, this has been great. Let's cut part one of the show off here. Everybody, please tune into next episode. We're going to keep asking Dave questions of what it's like to be president and CEO at Costa Vida.